All right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. tnholler.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever else. We also have all these hollers hollering all across the state thanks to your support. Chip in $10 a month or more and get one of these sweet holler hats like the one I'm wearing. Before we get started, just a quick shout out to Abby Rubenfeld. If you need a lawyer and Jeff Yarbro is busy, reach out to Abby. And if you are buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, Elisa Parker is who you should reach out to. All right, let's get into it. Today we're joined by two guests. Rarely do this, but I think I can manage. Both are elected officials in Tennessee, both in Nashville, and together they have just joined forces to stop the richest man in the world. Senator Jeff Yarbro and Representative Jason Powell. How are you guys today?
Great. Thanks for having us on. Really appreciate and follow the holler.
Yeah, follow
Appreciate
the
everybody
holler.
joining.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Justin. There's a lot to holler about this week.
There is, unfortunately. All right, so everybody knows, we can see your comments. Good afternoon. Feel free to ask some questions here, but why don't we start with you, Senator Yarbro? What is the Stop Elon Act? And just so people can see the news stories that have happened about it already. We saw WSMV talk about it, and there's been a few news stories about it, so people can Google it and check it out and read about it. But so Yarbro, tell us what this is.
It is a pretty simple piece of legislation, and what it does is it says that if anybody illegally interferes with a Tennessean's benefits, loans, grants that are coming from the federal government, that person should be treated as taking money from Tennesseans. They should be civilly and criminally liable for that conduct. Really, there's no difference between just taking somebody's Social Security check out of their mailbox and stopping it from being sent in the first place if it's against the law. And so I think what we're worried about is that the federal government, there seems to be a pretty concerted attack on the rule of law and very few ways to actually, and very little willingness in the DOJ or in Congress to actually hold these guys to account. And so I think the pressure is on states to actually come up with ways to protect their citizens. And that's all this bill does.
Rep Powell, people should be aware that obviously Elon Musk has a presence in Memphis. His supercomputer, sounds like something out of Despicable Me, is now housed there. So, I guess I'm wondering, tell us a little bit about, do you anticipate Republicans joining you in this effort?
I would certainly hope so. Look, this is a statewide problem. This is a nationwide problem. As I'm sure Senator Yarbrough has been, my office has been bombarded with my constituents, his constituents, non-constituents saying, please do something. This is extremely scary. This is unprecedented to think that someone that is not a part of the government, that has just been given full reign of going in and looking at the most sacred parts of our government that helps deploy money to people and look, these are benefits that are earned. These are grants that are earned. People stake their entire livelihood on this money. And so they've said, please stop this from happening. We've got to take action, do something. So we're really excited. We've had enough. We're trying to do everything we can to protect Tennesseans. Quite frankly, Justin, I've been a little disappointed, not with my colleagues in the legislature, but nationwide with Democrats not stepping up to do something. And we can't be afraid. This is not a time to be afraid. What we should be afraid about is having Elon Musk having carte blanche over our entire Treasury Department and these payments and these grants and monies that people depend on, that they've earned. So let's step up. Let's do everything we can. I think we're on the brink of having a constitutional crisis on our hand. And if Republicans really believe in states' rights, then yeah, let's fight for Tennesseans and fight for their rights. to receive the benefits they deserve and have earned.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, Justin. I mean, look, we recognize that we're in a red state, and while some of our more extreme colleagues right now are not going to join in this effort, while they're enjoying the sugar high of dealing with paper straws and picking out vacation spots in Gaza or whatever. But when this starts affecting their communities, when it starts leading to people being unemployed, to hospitals closing in their community because Medicare payments aren't getting made, I actually think that this is one that you could see a lot of people coming around to the fact that this is wrong and has to stop, and looking for ways to be creative about how to do it.
Well, and I don't really think that Trump has a great handle on what Elon is doing, So, we've seen these federal workers come out and say that the data heist is the entire ball game, and Democrats at the federal level are starting to speak up. You've seen, some of these pressers, they're now like making a show of going to the Department of Education, for instance, today, which I think is the next target, and shutting down USAID. So, the people's fear is real. And I'm not sure exactly what he wants, but I do know that a lot of this stuff is exactly what our enemies want to see for us. So, Senator Yarbro, like, how do you get the message out to the people that are propping this up to say, yeah, this is affecting you also?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I've never seen people become as gullible as they have in the last few days talking about Elon Musk. I mean, we've got Steve Bannon out there calling him an oligarch, saying I don't know about this guy. But yet you see all of these kind of folks who have been pretty skeptical about lots of things that they read. And they're just insistent that all they're doing is rooting out fraud and abuse. Look, you don't need to control a payment system to do that kind of work. I mean, that kind of work should be bipartisan. There's government waste. We should go after that. There's lots of ways to do that and do it right, but they're doing it in a way that's going to break things. And we've already seen the security of the country compromised. They sent out an email on an unsecured server that had the names of everybody, all of the new CIA hires over the last 2 years. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's going to get people killed. And we know that we're doing things that just undermine our position in the world. And it's largely to the benefit of the Chinese. I mean, the Chinese are winning every day right now. We are doing whatever, if they couldn't have asked us to do, what we're actually just self-immolating to achieve.
Right. Yeah. Jason, or Rep Powell, what do you think about that? Are we hurting ourselves to the benefit of our enemies here?
We definitely taken, look, America, we've been a leader my entire life. Really proud of the role we played in globally in the world. But right now, all these actions that are occurring they are extremely scary. When we're talking about turning Gaza into the Riviera, just without any sort of thought process, even to imagine that, it's just beyond comprehension. I have people that are saying, look, I plan on going to Europe this fall, and now I'm reconsidering those plans. I don't know if I'm going to be safe. People that have respected us and looked to America as just the great hope that it is now, a lot of people consider these actions that we're doing is to be atrocious, and we're becoming a laughingstock. And so, when you give somebody, again, full access that has not gone through proper security clearances, the proper channels of confirmation of the Senate, that has people coming in who no one knows who they are to go through our data. Look, if that was to happen at any corporation in America, we'd be outraged. They would be put in check, and there would be lawsuits flying off the shelf. But we have let this private individual come in, have access to all this data, all this information, threaten to cut off all these payments and benefits. And it is going to be catastrophic, potentially. And I think, right now we've got to rein this in, or we are going to face consequences that are gonna face us for years as a result of these actions.
We're seeing they are already shutting down USAID. This was them blacking out the name on the address today. So they're literally erasing this department. And, just to bring it to Tennessee for a minute, Senator Yarbrough, USAID is, a recipient of a lot of the efforts of Tennessee farms, for instance. So this is going to have real world impact for people on the ground. Do you think people realize the connection to, what we do as a state and what happens at the federal level and how this is going to impact us in a real way?
I mean, look, I think that they are about to, if they don't already. So in Tennessee, we actually get 38% or so of our state budget directly from the federal government. That's before you think about all of the dollars that come into the Tennessee economy that come in through Social Security, Medicare, direct benefits to cities, or the ways that they support hospitals like the VA system. I mean, and so, I mean, we know that this administration has taken acts that have led to people being unemployed in our district, right? Like that was in the national banner today. So we know that they're doing that, and we know that they're doing a lot of these steps without getting anywhere close to following the law. I mean, you want to go pass a statute to eliminate a program, rock and roll. That's the way government works. I understand how elections have consequences, but I think that the dangerous thing that we're seeing is that they're not going through any sort of anything close to a legal process. They're bringing in 20-year-old kids who, have been edgelords on the internet and coders to decide whether or not money's going to go out to different various communities. That's terrifying, and it's not even close to the rule of law.
Rep. Powell, a lot of people over the past year during the election, one of the things that we've heard a lot about is Project 2025. And, what we've said often is Project 2025 is Project 2024 in Tennessee, right? We've seen a lot of this stuff going on here. And one of the things that's happening now is a consolidation of power, a centralization of power. And it does have kind of an echo of a lot of what we've seen in Tennessee. So, how is it conservative to basically cede all of congressional oversight and basically just give all of this power to the executive branch and make the president essentially a king? Is that a conservative principle?
I think clearly not. We have seen just actions that, as you said, look, a lot of these things and a lot of these ideas we have witnessed firsthand in our state. A lot of people that were involved with Project 2025 were Tennessee quote unquote conservatives who came up with some of these ideas. And we were told, hey, look, this isn't going to really happen. This Project 2025, it's not going to be a part of a Trump presidency. And now we're seeing essentially the 2025 playbook unfold. And it's not unfolding, over the course of 2025. Right now, it's unfolding in the course of 2 weeks in 2025. I mean, the level of things that are being done and the rapidness that they're happening, it is so alarming. And we have seen these things happen in our own state where we have made the Tennessee General Assembly a place where the Democrats and our side we're not allowed to speak. Votes are taken, and oftentimes the debate is not even held. We've kept people from being able to even sit in the galleries of the House.
Let's be clear. This is the House mainly, and Speaker Sexton. I just want to highlight that McNally doesn't really run it that way. Speaker Sexton very much does.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm a House member.
Right.
I've had a front row seat. I've had a front row seat to all this. Sometimes I forget that they still have a little bit of civility over there in the Senate and following the rules.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, on the House side, again and again, and we saw this during our special session where debate was limited. They set up this rigged 45-minute, might as well might have given us 45-minute for a press conference, the other side 45-minute for a press conference, and not even being able to ask questions, because that's what took place on the voucher debate. It was ridiculous. And so we continue to see this happening here. And now, Trump is on the move. He's going to try to execute all these different plans that he claimed and said he wasn't going to do. They acted like this wasn't going to happen. This was never, and people that tell me we the people, and, this is what people voted for. I never once heard the Trump campaign say they were going to let Elon Musk go in and raid the computers of the highest levels of government. I mean, that would have seemed, and these things just seem outrageous, but they are truly occurring as we speak. And so I'm really proud, that we're stepping up, have this legislation. We want to have teeth, and we think let Tennesseans be the first to speak out and stop this, and have a place where people can, we are going to continue to follow the law in our state. It is a non-conservative principle, in every belief that I have, that you would simply allow someone to go in, not go through a process, and just wipe out government and departments and agencies that have been successful for multiple years. And yes, look, is there fraud? Is there some waste in government? Of course there is, right? But there is a process for going through, figuring that out, rooting the spending that we don't need to have occur. But to say that we're just going to blanket cut off benefits and grants and just all the things that is occurring right now is shocking.
Yeah, and also and I'm going to throw it to you, Senator Yarbro, but also I think it's worth reminding people that, like, just because you disagree with a program doesn't make it fraud. And a lot of what they're bringing up, they're pointing to things they don't like. That does not make it fraud. And, they're also lying a lot. So one of Musk's claims was that only 10% of the aid from USAID actually reaches recipients. Well, what was really said was only 10% goes directly to the recipients, but the rest of it goes through a third party and eventually gets there. So, they're misleading people. They're lying to people. And again, I just want to highlight that just because you disagree with something does not make it fraud.
Well, that's exactly right. And look, I mean, when you give individuals the power to break the law, to go after things you don't like, you're also giving them the power to go after things you do. And I mean, we were going down some dangerous paths here because, look, I don't think that you've got actually much consensus inside the Trump MAGA universe about what they're trying to create on the back end. And so what we're seeing is just a lot of destructive activity.
Yep.
And look, who benefits from the destruction? Like the people who have the most money and don't need the government protection.
That's
right. And so that is one of those things where, I mean, I think they're laying waste to things and hoping they can get away with it before the rest of the system kind of catches on and catches up to stop them. And that's where I think you've got to see action sort of in Congress, but also in the states. I mean, look, we're going to try to do this in Tennessee, but I think you've got to see people stand up everywhere against this kind of work. And I mean, I think states will need to be doing this in other places where they're going to have a better legislative pathway, because we need actual threats and meaningful actions that we can take against this type of illegality across the board.
I want to ask you guys about one separate thing, but before, I just want to illustrate your point, because the theory that they're operating under here, their big picture point is we have to cut the budget because we're in too much debt, right? That's their big thing. We have to cut Meanwhile, Trump's proposed tax plan will add $5 trillion to the debt while he's tweeting out balanced budget. So, the idea here is cut to make room so that they can pass these tax cuts for the rich and have them not look as bad. But it just really undercuts their entire point when their plan is to pass these tax cuts for the rich that are going to add trillions of dollars to the debt. So it shows to me that they don't actually care about the debt and that this is all bullshit.
That is actually the technically correct term.
Thank you. Okay. New
Right? Like,
topic
they have
here.
no concern about the budget, about the budget deficit, the debt. They're not taking that seriously at all, and they're giving the appearance of doing a bunch of spending cuts that are going to be pretty minor at the end of the day, while they're planning the biggest giveaway to billionaires like Elon Musk and others at the same time.
Right.
I don't know. We ran Jason off.
We did. He's had it. He's for tax cuts for the rich, apparently. I think we might get him back. Maybe it's just bad service wherever he is. There we go. He's back. Okay. So new topic. One of the.
I thought for a minute they cut off the TV.
They did. That was definitely Elon.
Yeah, I mean, I've been checking my Twitter account to see if it's deactivated. So
just one thing I want to ask you about before I let you guys go. We just saw your colleagues on the Republican side, William Lamberth and Senator Bo Watson, have a bill essentially to allow schools to not let undocumented kids go to school. There's a Supreme Court case called Plyler versus Doe that basically said, we have undocumented kids here. Let's educate them. You can't deny kids education based on their whether they're documented or not as immigrants. And, as they tend to do here in Tennessee Republicans want to run a bill, run it all the way up the flagpole to the Supreme Court and challenge Plyler versus Doe. So I guess I'll start with the lawyer here. Jason, you're not a lawyer, are you? Rep. Powell, are you a lawyer?
Not.
Okay, no. I will start with the lawyer then. Senator Yarbro, what are your thoughts on this obviously cruel bill that's targeting undocumented kids? To me, it just why would you want your legacy to be, hey, I kept some kids out of school?
Right. Well, I mean, look, it is unconstitutional under law that's been in place for more than 4 decades. We know that doesn't matter to folks anymore for some reason. But this is one where, put the legal part aside, I just want to know, where do people go to Sunday school or whatever to figure out that the right thing to do is to punish 6 and 7-year-olds, right? I mean, if you wanted to actually do something about, illegal immigration in the United States, we know that there are businesses, entire sectors of the economy that are reliant, profit from, and incentivize, people coming to the country illegally. But these guys that aren't going after construction places, they're not going after meatpacking plants or hotels. They are choosing to go after 6 and 7-year-old kids and punish them by not letting them learn how to read. That's a permanent loss in a human being's life that's just cruel. And it's also self-destructive. In what community is going to be better off because there is an illiterate, uneducated underclass? I mean, that certainly no community that has any consistency with what this country has been about in the entire, for most of its history.
Rep. Powell doesn't want to take this one. It's too tough.
Sorry, we got it
checked out.
That email.
I agree with you. He's back. I think he does want to weigh in on this. Rep. Powell, before you get kicked off by the gods again, I just want to let you weigh in on William Lamberth's cruel bill.
So listen, it's a horrible, cruel bill. We saw just last week they passed and rammed through a bill, tied it to what they called disaster relief funding for East Tennessee. Part of that package, they also passed this bill where now they've criminalized anyone in our state that's an elected official that even votes to try to help and support immigrants in our state. That's the law they passed. So, look, I represent, and I know Senator Yarbrough, we share part of the same district. We've got some wonderful schools that are 100 plus languages are spoken in these schools. They're wonderful. I always say when I enter a school and there's people from all over the world, that makes me feel great, because if people want to come from all over the world to Tennessee and to Nashville, what an honor. And I realize some people are refugees and they're fleeing, yes, but people that want to come here and live and prosper. But let's get back to the point that Senator Yarbrough was talking about. We're talking about children who came here through no fault of their own, whether or not you want to, talk about the parents and their legal status. These are children. They had no say in this. They're here. We should educate those children. And I also want to point out, think about the amount of tax dollars that we collect from immigrant communities. Does Lamberth and the senator, do they want to sponsor legislation to not collect sales tax from immigrants?
Yeah.
That's a bill I think they should actually be running if they feel so. They're so against immigrants. Let's not take their money either.
I think that's a really important point, because one of the things that's going to get brought up to support this, and I hear it a lot from right-wing media in Tennessee, especially, is, the amount of kids that we educate and how much it costs us, but they don't look at the contributions of the workers of these families, not just in tax base, but also, the labor they provide and what they do for the communities. So they're only looking at one side of that equation. And I think it's going to be a really important part of this conversation as they run this bill to bring up exactly what you're talking about right there. Senator Yarbrough, any last thoughts about this?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, we charge sales taxes of everybody that lives here, period, and anybody that shops here. So like, these people are paying taxes, but the in even if you think there is a cost that is unfair, like, the cost is dwarfed by what the economic cost downstream of having people in your community that have like not been taught the language, who have not been taught how to read. Like, that is not the way that you actually grow an economy anywhere on planet Earth. And you don't have to be a PhD economist to understand that, like, intentionally decreasing the education level of your population is a stupid thing to do.
Right. And again, Rep. Powell, you look like you want to say.
Let me say one last thing here,
No.
Justin, and a little bit of a same topic, a little different, but we suffered this horrific school shooting in Antioch High School a couple weeks ago. And I just want to be clear, the response between a shooting at a primarily Black and brown student population school and that of a white school has been dramatically different. And so I think as a society, we need to examine what we truly believe in and the way we live our lives, and say, for when it comes to especially children, when it comes to valuing children differently based upon their skin color, their income bracket, that is shameful. That is wrong. And we need to stop the hate, and we need to lead with love, and we need to do everything we can to stop gun violence and stop mass shootings, particularly in our schools. And, Jocelyn's life is just as important as any other child's life in this state. And it's a shame what they are doing to the immigrant community across our state.
I couldn't agree more. And like, one of the vilest things that's happened in the last few weeks is to hear, this guy who's been JD Vance out there talking about how he relies on Christianity to say that we don't owe obligations to other people in the community. I mean, like, in what universe is that what the Good Samaritan's about? Is what universe is any of the things that these people have claimed to believe in for so long served by being cruel and hateful? And it's a really dark place when you see people not just doing cruel things, but claiming that there is some, moral excellence in their doing so. I mean, that should make everybody really stop and think about what is happening right now.
Absolutely agree. And just to bring it full circle to the Elon stuff, there was a Doge employee who they found some racist texts of his, and he was forced to resign. And JD Vance, who you're talking about, the vice president, came out and defended the guy, saying we should bring him back, even though the things that he said was, I was racist before it was cool. You could not pay me to marry outside my ethnicity. And the capper is normalized Indian hate when JD Vance is married to an Indian American woman. So that does not feel like the Jesus spirit to me. And, I think you're right to call that out. Thank you both for coming on here and talking about it. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing what happens with the Stop Elon Act.
We'll do it.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks.
Take care, guys. So that is Senator Jeff Yarbrough and Rep. Jason Powell. The Stop Elon Act is their bill to deal with Elon, running roughshod throughout the government, taking your data, your Social Security. I mean, who knows what these guys have at this point? I think we should assume they have everything because, how long does it take to download something? Not that long. And these guys are probably pretty good at that. It's probably why they're there. So just assume now that the richest man in the world who has his own selfish interest, has no real loyalty to this country, has your stuff and didn't take it for fun. And the Stop Elon Act is intended to essentially criminalize blocking you from getting your benefits if that's what ends up happening here in Tennessee. And, that could be intentional. That could be because they hit a button weird, which, probably will happen at some point somewhere. I think everybody should be alarmed. And, I was encouraged to see in Chattanooga yesterday people coming out into the streets saying no more billionaires and showing up at Chuck Fleischman's office to make their voices heard.
No more billionaires. No more billionaires. We're dealing with people who do not feel remotely accountable to us, and we have to be that pebble in their shoe.
We have to be that pebble in their shoe. I really respect and appreciate that people took time out of their day yesterday to do that. That kind of thing is going to have to happen more and more, and sometimes it's not going to feel like it's doing much, but it is. People need to understand that, shame works. I'm a big believer in shame, and we need to ramp up the shame. Elections do have consequences. They do have a lot of the power, but they don't control the shame levels. And I think it's important to reach out to your elected officials, let them know you're watching, let them know you understand what they're doing, and call them out by name. One of the things that we try to do at the Holler is put a face to everything, put a name to everything. They don't want to be associated with this. Eugene Robinson just put out an article on the Washington Post that really pissed off Trump today. Trump called for him to be fired because he basically called out Republicans for not standing up to this stuff. And, that's a pressure point because they know better. I think in a lot of cases, they do know better. And that's really important to call that out. Speaking of calling things out, just as one final thing, I just want to call out one thing that happened this week. We saw Cade Cothran, who, if you remember, he was the chief of staff for Speaker Cassada, who resigned in shame as the shortest serving speaker in Tennessee history. I'd like to think we played a small part in that. Really corrupt guy, not a good guy, Cassada. Cade was his chief of staff. Cade had a bunch of issues in his own right. Some racist texts came out and stuff like that. And he's facing a trial for this campaign finance issue that Cassada and Cade have had. And it's been going on for years. And Cade's life has basically been put on hold over that. And, that's probably going to come to a head soon. But also, Cade was saying some stuff about Speaker Sexton and the role that he played in some of this stuff. And last year, I don't remember when it was, I think the middle of the year, the FBI raided Cade, another lawyer, and some other guy, accusing them of cyber stalking. And now Cade apparently is facing another criminal issue over this cyber stalking issue. And I guess Cade must have had enough, and he spoke out yesterday in a pretty forceful way. And he wrote, and basically what amounts to an essay on Twitter about this. And I just want to point to a couple of the things that he said, because he really unleashed on Speaker Sexton in this Twitter diatribe. And, I just want to reiterate, this is the chief of staff for the last Republican Speaker of the House talking about the current Republican Speaker of the House. So there's no Democrats involved in any of this. This is all Republican on Republican stuff. And so Cade wrote about how 3 years ago, a swarm of heavily armed federal agents arrived at my door with battering rams to arrest me. And then since then, they've used okay, I think that was the campaign finance stuff. And then he's talking about they're attempting to indict me once again. So that's the cyber stalking, not because I've done anything, but because I exercised my First Amendment. And he goes on to talk about Speaker Sexton and his residency issues, which were pretty public, where Speaker Sexton does not appear to live in the district that he represents, which should be a big deal. He talked about how all these troopers have been posted at the Capitol, a lot of taxpayer money going to troopers, which Senator Yarbro and Rep Powell were just talking about. He talked about taxpayer funds to fund undisclosed settlements for sexual misconduct allegations, which is the Scotty Campbell thing. He talked about some other stuff in terms of relationships with people. So Speaker Sexton got called out by Cade Cothran over some pretty serious things. And I just think it's important for people to understand that happened, pay attention to it, and realize that, there's a lot of nefariousness that goes on up the Capitol. And as much as we're paying attention to what's going on at the federal level, rightly so, our state capitol, there's a lot of nonsense that happens there. And we try to highlight it as much as we can. But, the more attention people can pay to what's going on at our state capitol here in Tennessee, the better. So I hope you will pay attention to that. Go to at Cade Cothran to check out his Twitter diatribe. And I believe the trial for Cothran and Cassida is scheduled for April. And from what I'm hearing, that's the reason that the legislative session will probably end April 1st, is because they don't want to be in session while all that's going on. A lot of nonsense. Stop ELON Act. Senator Yarbrough and Rep Powell, tell your reps to support it. Follow the hollers, and we'll see you next time.